Okay, let's start with the news. Yesterday, Derek Delboy Chisora had his licence to fight withdrawn by the British Boxing Board of Control. Today, some of the headlines and reports were a bit drastic. In fact, I've read about 9 papers today, and I'm gobsmacked at some of the garbage that's in the papers. Not only the factual inaccuracies, okay, but some of the ridiculous quotes that have been twisted. We call it turning a quote. It's allowed. We're allowed to do that in newspapers. But the way, if you read some of them, you'd think Derek had been banned for years, not just indefinitely, not just withdrawn. You'd think he'd been banned for 10 years. It's savage, some of the stuff. Some of the subs have got together and some of the writers. Half the stuff written today, I tell you what, in the old days when I started, you'd have been sacked for turning out such garbage. Phew, you really would. Also in the papers today, a story about a hit on a fighter, that fighter being George Groves, who was due to fight tomorrow night at Wembley in a British title fight. The fight was called off on Monday when Groves sustained a back injury. The fight being called off has nothing, so George has said, to do with the threat on his life, which the police investigated, according to one newspaper this morning. Where to start? Anyway, let's go with Chisora, 24 hours on, and I'm joined by promoter Frank Warren, who was at the hearing. Good evening, Frank.
Good evening, Steve.
A very, very lively 24 hours. If I could start with Derek Delboy Chisora, I'm led to believe it was a fairly feisty meeting down there at the British Boxing Board of Control in Cardiff.
Well, it was... Look, we've all seen what happened, the pictures and the television footage of him slapping slapping Vitaly Klitschko and spitting in his brother's Vladimir's face. And as I've said all the way along, it's pretty indefensible what happened there. Well, my concern was what happened behind the scenes, what led up to those events, and obviously the terrible situation that happened outside the ring, at the press conference with David Hay.
Yep.
And Derek, he's got a bit of previous with the Board of Control for some stupid things he's done, and he's been fined on a couple of occasions, and he had a 3-month suspension. So there are times where he's let himself and let the sport down, and none of us have been too happy, including the British Boxing Board of Control, and I suppose Derek himself when he reflects on it. But what was concerning me was what all I ever wanted was a fair hearing. Yep. And that I didn't feel we was going to get. And when we got down there, I was still very concerned because it seemed that everybody had made their mind up at around the table. The feeling was it would be about an hour's meeting, ban him and that would be it. But and I was concerned. The first thing that we wanted, or his barrister Jonathan Crystal wanted, who was representing him there, was we wanted to make sure that there was a TV monitor in there because there was a lot of visual evidence which was taken from mobile phones of people who were there who we got hold of, and also other different TV companies. There was different angles from lots of different shots. The reason for this, because the board, as I knew would happen when we got down, this relied on contrary to what I was reading in a couple of newspapers today, where they trawled through a lot of evidence. There was about a minute's worth of footage that they showed.
That's ridiculous.
There was no TV monitor. It was shown to us on a laptop. There was 18 people in the room, and we had
all huddled around one laptop.
Around a laptop to watch this, and obviously we wanted to present our evidence. So it got to a stage where the DVD that we brought down couldn't even be played on the laptop that the board had, and my son Francis was there, had a laptop, and we played it on that. So that work to me wasn't very satisfactory. In reviewing that evidence, it was there was a lot of things there that were brought to the attention of the board, and I think they were quite surprised at some of the things they see.
What some of the things you pointed out, some of the things that we've been watching over the last, stuff that's been servicing. We've run it, and they hadn't seen some of that stuff.
No, they hadn't seen some of that, and we provided a lot of things, a lot of photographic evidence, a lot of things were done. And more importantly, we needed witnesses. And there were a lot of allegations made by the WBC. There were a lot of allegations made by... Because there was 2 statements, one from the WBC, one from the German Federation, and Mr. Putz, his name is, and both those... neither of the guys were in attendance. Mr. Putz who was the guy who does a lot probably behind the scenes. It was a WBC fight. He was the one who's causing all the problems in the dressing room with Derek Chisora about hand wrapping, which lasted for quite a while, as you know. Because
yeah, of course.
You were there, and you said, well, it transpires that. And one of the big problems at that show was the lack of security.
Yep, we know that afterwards.
Had there been more, you see it the after fight, but there'd been more security. I believe that some of the incidents could have been stopped. It turns out Mr. Putz, allegedly, but I'm quite confident, it's his security company that actually.
Well, that's convenient.
Which, to say the least, that's a bit like Robert Smith working for me from the British Boxing Board of Control.
It's absurd.
Severe conflict of interest. So we're up against that to start with in Germany, and explained now some of the things that went on. I asked at all times for. We had a problem with the president and chairman in Germany, Charlie Jones. He was supposed to be representing the British Boxing Board of Control.
Yep.
License holders. You know yourself, we were looking for him. We proved all that. We showed all the evidence. He was sitting ringside when he was asked to come in to help sort out some of these terrible problems that are going on behind the scenes that I believe contributed to the tension and all the aggravation that followed. He wasn't there. Charlie Giles did not even make a written statement to the board.
How can that be the case? If he's there as...
let me finish. He didn't... There was no written statement, so we didn't any written notes. We don't know what he reported back, but there was no written statement, which I find unbelievable. Stewards normally come back and report, especially in an event like this, and the problems were there. You'd expect the inspector to be doing that, but it transpires that Charlie Giles, and when an inspector normally goes out there, or to represent the British fighter, that is paid for by the British Boxing Board of Control. The airfares and hotel bill because he's there for the British fighter.
And they in turn take a small fee from the fighter.
They take
absolutely
from the fighter, and that should cover that. Especially, you're talking about the Board of Control really up on the WBC, as far as they're concerned. It's the premier organisation, and this is for the blue ribbon belt, the heavyweight belt. Cut a long story short, it transpires that Charlie Giles' expenses and flights and whatever were paid by the WBC, which would mean that it was probably paid by the K2 promoter.
By the promoter.
So how can he be there representing the board? Because he also sits on the WBC as on the executive committee. So that, to me, I found amazing. That, in other words, we had no representation there from the British Boxing Board of Control. Wow. We asked that Charlie Giles give evidence. We wanted to questions.
Of course, questions you wanted to ask him.
Yeah, and we were told he's not in attendance, and he wasn't there. It transpired he actually was in the Board of Control building and stayed for a while and went out the back door. And
somebody you know saw him go out the back door.
Oh yeah, he was there. There's no doubt he was in the building. He was seen in the building by a couple of people, so he was there. So what was that all about? Why was that? Why was there reluctance to give evidence? Why wasn't there a written report? And it became very difficult. And I think at the end of the day, I think that we managed to, we were very honest and open with the board, went through the whole situation. Sure. He got his license withdrawn, which means perversely he's not banned. He doesn't have a license, but he's not banned from boxing anyway. He's just not licensed by the board because they don't see him as a fit and proper person.
So Frank, do you think had you not been forthright, or use the word aggressive, but not aggressive in a physical sense, had you not been forthright and aggressive, do you think that Derek would have left there with a ban yesterday?
Oh, without that, yeah, without that.
And a decent sized ban, and you think that was a possible?
Look, let's get it right. He was entitled something. He was entitled, without a doubt. Yep. There should have been some punishment.
Yes,
there's no doubt about that. Some of the things happening were disgusting, so at least. But there was a lot of people involved, including myself, and everybody has to stand up and take some responsibility for what went on there, including myself.
Yep.
We were not given passes to bring our own security.
Yep.
You expect to be looked after by the promoter. And if it's one of my promotions, we always ensure we have adequate security there. We're quite up on that. There wasn't, especially after the slapping incident.
Sure.
You thought any sensible promoter would ensure that there were security in the ring to ensure these guys don't get too close to each other. which may have spooning incident might have happened, you know, and certainly the press conference afterwards, David Hay attended. We definitely established that through photographic and through video evidence and hand phones, the mobile hand video phones, established that Derek didn't even throw a punch. Was hit, you know, by David Hay with a bottle in his hand, tripod, etc. We established that after that happened, that David Hay went down to the front of the to the dais where Vitaly Klitschko,
laughing and joking and shaking hands.
The promoter who was laughing, clapped him, cheered him, shook his hand. That all went on. These are the promoters, by the way. You'd think that the promoter would be really upset, something like that.
Well, he said he was upset. This is the irony. You know, within half an hour, he's talking about how disgusted he was.
By the way, which the board for some reason never had that, but we
that is amazing.
But more, you know, all that was established with us sitting around this little laptop, watching this. And remember, the police in Germany have reviewed all this. They had it from within a day. They had all this. That's how we got hold of it.
Of course.
And on the strength of that, decided that Derek didn't have any. They weren't going to press.
Nothing to answer.
And looking for somebody else in regard for GBH, you know, for a potential GBH charge. But anyway, all that taken into consideration. Yeah, sure, he should have had his hands slapped. Whilst we're there, we're told that the WBC are calling the hearing in London
next Wednesday, isn't it?
April.
Yeah. For
another hearing. How many hearings are we having for this?
Yeah.
Why can't these people all get together? The cost of this.
The manpower and the hours.
Being continually tried for the same situation. That's 2 trials for one offence.
Well, listen, you might end up having 3.
But the board, according to the board, they were unaware that this was that this hearing was being called. So what's the coordination? The Board of Controls, Charles Giles is on their executive committee. Why don't they know about it? And the whole thing to me is not right. You know, Derek Chisora should be punished for certain things that he did, but if we're gonna, but we need to ensure that other people who had some responsibility to look after the image of boxing were there to answer for their actions. Like I was there to answer for my part in it. Like Derek Chisora was. Where was Charles Giles? Where was the German Federation stroke security company? You know, where was the WBC? None of these people were there. And it's wrong. That's not how it should be.
No, Frank, it's been, listen, you've revealed some stuff here tonight that even I didn't know. Let me ask you this before I let you go, and thanks for your time. Now, you've got 14 or 13 days left to appeal. Are you any nearer to making a decision on that?
No, we're going to meet next week. What we're going to do, we have a WBC hearing and then an appeal hearing with the British Boxing Team. This is all ridiculous. How many more things? You know, that's another 2 things. If we go down, we're going to make a decision, or Derek's going to make a decision. You know, he's got what he's done, and I can't defend some of those things that were done. But I've got to tell you something. You know, at the end of the day, I want to see some consistency now from the board. If this is what they're saying, this is what they're going to do, we want to see some consistency. And I would also like to see that, like what happens both with most sporting organisation governing bodies, for example, the FA, if you're charged with something, then what happens is that an independent tribunal hear those charges and determine what will happen. What's happening with the Board of Control? It's like the police arresting you and the police hearing the case and handing out the punishment. There's no independence there.
And
that is wrong. In this day and age, that is wrong.
No, certainly, especially when there's serious things to be discussed. Listen, Frank, I'm going to have to let you go there, but thanks very much for your time. I'll speak to you later. That's Frank Warren there, giving us a real insight into what went on, or rather what didn't go on. Also news that the WBC will not agree to a fight between Hay and Vitaly Klitschko. Well, that's what Teflon-goated Jose Suleiman has claimed. The WBC suits are in London next week, as Frank mentioned, to discuss Chisora's future. Perhaps Hay will meet with them, off the record, of course. I'm sure that Vitaly will show Jose the seating plan for $75,000 in the summer for a fight against Hay. Something to think about, eh? Thanks to Andrew Whittaker for parts of that story. Now,